Talking CRM with Jeff and David, getting the best value for the whole organization from your integrated CRM and accounting systems. David Beard, CRM Principal, and Jeff Richards, Head of Training Program Development for Sage CRM, spend time chatting with customers, resellers, and others about Sage CRM in action around the globe. In this episode, Jeff picks up on the idea of explaining using pictures and talks further about value chain analysis. We also look at how CRM supports activities beyond accounting and how Dan's company brings extra expertise to his customers through his value-added partnerships with other partners.
One of the things that I liked what you said, you talked about explaining using pictures by you actually show demonstrations of systems that you've implemented, which show a particular process or show a particular feature. That's that. If I understood you correctly, that way you're using the idea of essentially showing prototypes of systems to allow ideas to be tested and assumptions to be checked.
Don't know if you guys ever thought about it this way, but accounting systems, it's pretty hard to fail. They do fail, for sure. Companies remove their accounting system or the project might take longer, but it is relatively rare. In the world of CRM, people still pay their bills if the CRM system is getting used or not. But I'm so consciously aware of things going sideways that I'm risk adverse, and I try to pad that into my sales process because I've just been aware, I've just been involved in so many disappointments. Don't want it anymore. Try to minimize it.
Disappointments is a good word for it because it is to do with that management of expectations, and therefore if you're delivering something which no longer matches expectations. The analogy that David used right at the beginning of starting a journey and hitting a first viewpoint, turning around and starting to look around and understanding, I could go from here, is actually a very real analogy. That's a very good visual picture to do because one of the challenges that a business has is that it is never going to be working with a CRM system in an entirely static mechanism. Business is operating inside a dynamic commercial environment. You have all sorts of outside forces. You have legislative changes. You have COVID-19 changes. Suddenly, everyone working from home. You have competitive pressures. Those are all side, and then you have internal pressures as well. So, for example, the person who used to be your star salesperson disappears, and suddenly you're forced to fall back on, well, actually, is the process that my junior salesperson the best for selling things? You've got all sorts of changes that are taking place within an organization that your CRM system, as a communication system, as you described it as, I'd use the operational system, as needing to change very, very dramatically. And that can be changing not only over a 5-year period, but also within a 12-month period when you are in the process of implementation.
Happens all the time when we're delivering, for example, workflows. This is how the team is going to work, and this is how they're going to manage. And we have these design meetings with the client, and they've got their 3 managers in the video conference with us every Wednesday, and we plan, okay, it's going to be like this, it's going to be awesome. Invariably, massive changes once the rubber hits the road because it's just the nature.
You remind me, Dan, of a site I went to years ago. And it was a multinational pharma company, I think, from memory. We all got in the room, and exactly what you just described happened, almost to the point of them having a fight around the boardroom table. No, that's not what we do. Well, it is. No, but it's like, yeah, interesting, huh? You've never talked about this.
There's an electronics manufacturer in Milton Keynes, and where the consultants were, these were our colleagues, they were Sage people, and one of the walls was entirely covered with Post-it notes describing their process for just returns material authorization. And it was complex. And I was there on the day in which somebody came into the office and said, that's not the way in which we do it. So they had been taking the notes from one manager, from one department, to find that another customer inside one of the stakeholders did it completely differently.
All the time. All the time.
So, Dan, can I pivot you to a sort of different conversation? Because I know we could probably all riff on this for hours, and that would be exciting for us, but maybe nobody else. You mentioned earlier this using outsourcers, and I'm just curious about how you manage people, but in particular, what tools are you talking about using? Do you bring in other helpers and other pieces of technology to help you with the product?
Yeah, definitely. So position it as we're helping a company get organized with Sage CRM, and whether it's myself or my coworkers, April and Sheila, we would all be the application specialists, but not technicians or not computer science background, right? We don't install, we just work directly with the client. And we do have our own in-house developers. And I've been very, very fortunate with a group of people that I'm able to work with. And that's been going on now for a long time, and everybody's evolving. There's a lot of things that it just wouldn't make sense for us to get into. So sometimes we will outsource. For example, it looks like we are going to use Effective Solutions Google Maps. Why would we rebuild something that's already decent? So that's an example. But we have a couple very significant, I would say, partnerships that have been massively helpful. One being with CRM Together. It was so much easier to sell Sage CRM with that Outlook plugin, but also to keep our clients happy. That led into some other things, but working with CRM Together I would recommend it to partners to know what you're going to do and then have people to back you up. And the other very significant partnership I have is with the good people at Gratrix. And anything related to their stuff, of course, they are working on. They also do our data conversions. While we have our core group of people on the payroll, we might say, we have really, I think, the most talented people to draw from when needed.
And it's good for you because it gives you that agility, and also you play to your strengths. You know what you can and what you can't do.
I'm going to interject here. Everyone's around this table's fantastic track record in failure of projects. It's because if you're not failing at a project, you're not trying.
You're not learning.
You're not learning either. Hopefully, dear listener, it won't be your project that we fail on next. But if you want to understand a little bit more about why projects fail and why CRM projects fail, that we do have a series of blog articles, and also I think on the Sage CRM Sage customer support and training, there are some videos about developer best practices which cover some of the leading causes of project failure.
I think that's the first time Jeff's actually put an advert inside the podcast. Well done.
I feel like
good thinking,
Pepsi
by the way.
Just stepped into this.
Sage has provided us with this fantastic environment of the podcasts, the Sage City, the YouTube channels. We've got the e-learning platform. We've got so many resources to allow people to get up to speed with Sage CRM and to be able to then minimize the risks associated with projects so that they can deliver it successfully to achieve maximum business advantage from their investment.
Oh my God.
And I'm amazed you did that without a script. That's very good.
That was a mouthful. I would say that the failures, for the most part, are not technical at all. It's just in their approach and their strategy and their deployment. It's all in the planning. And anybody that is just going to jump in and start doing these projects, it's from experience that you know what are things to avoid or what are best practices to take.
I'm fond of using building analogies all the time. You wouldn't just rock up and start building your own house with no skills and no tools, because you'd end up with a pile of rubble. But you would employ a qualified builder who had all the right tools and had the skills.
Yeah, and you can be involved in all parts of it as long as you've got the support you need to avoid those pitfalls, because you don't want them.
Dan, we've covered a lot of ideas, a lot of thinking here. What if you had to give 1, 2, 3 pieces of cunning advice to someone in the Sage 100 or 300 world about CRM to encourage them to start on the journey? What would they be?
Don't do this without a net. Learn from experience.
I've got a tail end question for you. If you're going to be our very own Mystic Meg and get your crystal ball out and look into it and swirl through the clouds of consciousness, what do you see emerging from those mists in the next 5 years and the next 10 years from a CRM and from a Sage ERP? What do you think are the challenges that customers are going to be facing, or trends?
Trends. If everybody had an accounting system, it wasn't very long before everybody over a certain size had something. There are still a wealth of companies that have 20 employees, but no operational system or communication system. Once you've had exposure to it, you never turn back. And as you get more and more companies increasing the user base of the program and feeding into these accounting systems, or even as a standalone, it'll just get stronger and stronger. In the more immediate future, I'm seeing a lot of data visualization. So charts and reports where the person who prefers not to read text but can see a image showing them of their relationship with their company they're looking at. And that is going to be the big thing over the next 12 months. Longer term, just over the next 3 years, personally, we're getting more into order processing systems where the people that historically, so we run into systems all the time where they've got 40 people that log into the accounting system, when really there's only 3 people in the accounting team. It's all these people that need to log in and either look up inventory or put an order in. The future will be smaller, tighter, direct access to the accounting system and more people leveraging that data through the Sage CRM interface without consuming a very expensive accounting user license. And we're seeing, more and more of these companies that have giant users in the accounting system for the purposes of order processing are going to switch to using the CRM system. It's going to be a lot more graphical representation of data and a lot more of CRM becoming an order processing system on top of everything that it already does.
Dan, very illuminating. I like that idea. Take your name of a communication system and then blending it with Jeff's thinking about the operational piece and opening up all the pieces of information and data and processes to the people who need them right across the company. Thank you very much, Mr. Cousins. Very good talking to you as ever. I think that's been an insightful and entertaining chat, and I hope our listeners find the same.
Thank you for inviting me to your podcast, gentlemen.
You've been listening to Talking CRM with Jeff and David, getting the best for the whole organization from your integrated CRM and accounting systems.